ultimately, if you're watching all of this and you're going, what do I do here? This is the best time to acquire your position. If you're sitting there, you're not at your 1 Bitcoin or more yet, now is the best time to acquire it. You've got the best asset managers in the world. You've got them pitching Bitcoin to their people. You've got people waiting to acquire their Bitcoin that are going to start rotating into the markets. You've got advisors that are starting to sell into it. You've got liquidity that's going to open up. You've got the Fed that's going to lower the rates. You've got the supply that's going to go from 900 to 450 a day. There is a lot of excitement going on in this market. The BlackRock Bitcoin Fund has currently got $1.8 billion in it. To give you perspective, that is 0.018% of BlackRock's total assets under management. 0.018%. And my thought process has always been that I think that BlackRock and all these other asset managers will get to a 1% allocation. Well, do you know how much capital it would take to get to a 1% allocation for BlackRock? $100 billion equals a 1% allocation. And we're currently at 1.8 billion. That's basically the same 1.8 billion pretty much that's left Grayscale. I don't even think these fund managers have even started allocating yet. BlackRock just announced that they're hosting a webinar to teach their advisors about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin products and all this other stuff. So it's now just starting. Right? It hasn't even begun yet. So what I think you're going to see here, and by the way, $100 billion for a 1% allocation is just BlackRock. That's not including Fidelity and all the others that are out there. There is the top 500 asset managers on earth control $130 trillion of capital. If that gets to a 1% allocation, you're talking about a $1.3 trillion net purchase of Bitcoin. So if I was them and I see a sell the news event happen, all I'm going to do is hold back that capital, just start eating and trimming away at those orders and allow the market to come down and cascade down. Once that selling pressure is exhausted, start increasing the amount of purchasing I'm doing to scalp all of those Bitcoin out in the market. And then really at some point, the demand is going to meet the lack of supply. And that's what I think is going on. I don't even think BlackRock has even started buying. $500 million maximum, in my opinion, between BlackRock and Fidelity at this point. There is so much more buying here to come. And again, this is why one of the reasons why I started my YouTube channel is because, like I said, people like my parents would just miss this. Why? Because their advisors are not even telling them about Bitcoin until BlackRock gives them permission to do so. And even right now, if they work for Vanguard, for example, Vanguard's not even giving them permission to do so. So they're going to be left behind because the financial advisors are either uneducated or got their heads up their asses because they've been forced to put their head up their ass. So this is the reason why it's incredibly important to start learning about Bitcoin and start learning why you need an allocation right now as these market developments are happening. And this is the first time really that an asset going through a securitization process like this, we can even have this conversation like this on social media, and you can gain a position and understand what's going on in the markets, right? And how market functions work. And so, this is really what the purpose of my YouTube channel is about. So please subscribe. Please subscribe. Send it to your friends who are also not being advised by their wealth managers properly. And then send it to the stupid wealth managers as well. And again, it's not the wealth managers' fault most likely, because wealth managers love to make money. We all love to make money. Wealth managers love to make money, right? And so at some point, they'll be given permission to actually make money on Bitcoin. At that point, they're going to need to know what it is about Bitcoin to actually pitch it to their clients. And what they need to know, and what you need to know right now, is that BlackRock and Fidelity haven't even started buying yet. These orders that are coming in, the market is trimming up and chomping at all this Bitcoin, and these guys haven't even started buying yet. At some point, they're going to turn on their demand side, and that's when you're going to start seeing Bitcoin get taken out of the market. And so you got to stay patient. If you're in Bitcoin, you stay patient, you hodl, you follow the 3 rules to Bitcoin, and that'll be it. Right? But for everyone else who's new, you've got an opportunity here to acquire Bitcoin while BlackRock is still positioning itself to put in the couple $1 billion, $3 billion, $5, $6, $7, $8, $9 billion of AUM that they need to actually put into the asset to reach a certain allocation that they will have an internal guidance on, right? And the other thing I want to point out is that Again, like I've said, I think Bitcoin's going above $100,000 in this year. What that means is that my message of getting to at least one Bitcoin is going to become irrelevant faster than anyone can imagine. On top of all of that, the Fed has, the USA has got about $8 trillion worth of debt to refi this year. So you think they're going to keep the rates this high? Of course not. So the rates haven't even come down yet, which means risk on capital hasn't even started coming back into the market in droves yet. Right? At the same time, you've got the NASDAQ S&P making brand new all-time highs on a daily basis at this point, right? And I believe that you've got BlackRock and Fidelity sitting on the sidelines. If I was them, I wouldn't start allocating. I'd wait for the GBTC bleed to die. I'll get all my marketing in place, right? Look at what BlackRock's achieved, right, in this scenario. They've got the #1 most successful asset class launch to talk about. They've got the most amount of capital in the shortest period of time coming into their fund to talk about. So why would I need to start allocating my capital if I can just let GBTC do the work for me? So then you've got major advisors that are not even allowed to fill Bitcoin ETF orders because their compliance hasn't even combed through the data, because the compliance has to take time once it's approved to comb through the data and say, okay, you can actually sell this thing. In addition to that, everyone's worried about this GBTC bleed. The supply is about to drop on Bitcoin from 900 a day to 450 a day in under 3 months. In under 3 months. So they're buying or reacquiring 10,000 Bitcoin a day. The current supply is 900. It's about to go down to 450. In addition to that, the miners are selling the Bitcoin. Right? So miners might have GBTC positions, or they might have Bitcoin positions. They're selling that Bitcoin because generally around the halving, you're going to see a dump. But if you've seen a 200% increase in Bitcoin prices, or 100% increase, 100 and something percent increase in Bitcoin prices, and you know that a dump is going to happen before the halving, but the dump starts now, you're going to be sitting there going, let's just generate some liquidity at this point and sell some into the market. By the way, what do miners do going into a bull run? They don't sell. They hold. They hold the Bitcoin on the balance sheet because holding the Bitcoin on the balance sheet increases the value of the mining companies a lot more than actually selling the Bitcoin. So we're about to go into a period where not only is the supply of Bitcoin going to go down from 900 a day to 450 a day, the miners are going to stop selling all of that into the market because they're going to be holding it on their balance sheet to increase the value of the business as we go into that. And in addition to that, options haven't even been filed for. Like, options have been filed for, but they've not been approved yet, which means that Bitcoin's not even a cash flow generating asset yet. That's about to come. So all of this GBTC bleed that's happening, from my perspective, is good for the market. We're seeing reorganization. Based on what Bloomberg said, about 30% of that capital is finding its way into other Bitcoin exposures. And that's cool, which means 70% is sitting on the sidelines, according to Bloomberg, right? About 70% sitting on the sidelines, wondering what the hell's going on, right? Because if you're sitting there and you got, wait a second, let me sell my Bitcoin out of my GBTC position, then you start seeing the market slide. What are you going to do? You're going to buy back in? Or are you going to say, hey, let's wait a week and see what happens? Right? And again, not everybody, you're not going to be able to sell 100% of the GBTC Bitcoin holding. So at some point, you're going to start seeing that slow down. And again, it's just, based on what I can see on the data that Bloomberg is releasing around GBTC, I think we are going to see a slowdown in the amount of selling that's coming within the next 3 weeks. And as that happens, I think you're going to see, this is the part that really gets people, I think you're going to see a day of net inflows into the GBTC fund. And why is that? Because GBTC will still have the biggest fund. You're going to see why, even as BlackRock, let's say BlackRock gets 150,000 Bitcoin into their fund, while GBTC goes from 650,000 down to 400,000, right? But as BlackRock tries to catch up with that, the amount of capital that they're going to have to put in, the price is going to start running away from them. Quite simply, there is a lot of people that don't understand how volumes work and how liquidity works. GBTC is going to be a major player here. They may end up lowering their fee once the bleed is finished from 1.5 to 1% and keep all their clients happy that are still in the fund. But the fact that you can have an options market that's based on volumes and liquidity that's much more liquid on GBTC is very, very important. So you're going to see this slow down. GBTC's volumes, you're not just going to sell the whole fund to zero. There's definitely going to be some bleeding, but at some point, BlackRock and Fidelity are going to sit there and go, okay, the bleeding's about to stop. We better start allocating our capital. And that's really the quote-unquote bottom of the market. The bottom of the market is not, like, for example, you're seeing the price of GBTC and the price of, all of these Bitcoin ETFs up. So why is that? Because remember, there's a T plus 1 or 2 day difference on when the shares are sold versus when the Bitcoin hits the market. So you might see a bunch of Bitcoin hit the market because Coinbase has received it and they have to sell it into the market, but the selling of GBTC might already be done. So today we're seeing, and I'm not saying it's already finished, that's not what I'm saying, it might be slowing down, right? So we're seeing GBTC actually up today while they've sent 17,000 more Bitcoin into Coinbase's Prime Desk to sell. So in my perspective, the way I look at it is if I sell my GBTC shares today on Wednesday, but they don't hit the market till Friday, all of these big block sales that we saw come through might have been from last week. So GBTC bleed is going to slow down. In the next 3 weeks, I think we start seeing it extremely slow down very, very quickly. And then we may even see a day of positive net inflows because people will want their positions in the most liquid fund with the most volume so they can start generating options income on it when that comes out. So this is not going to last forever. The bleed is happening and the underbelly of the market is rotating quite nicely here, which tells me that we're getting close to some form of either pause in selling or a rotation and an exhaustion of selling. But ultimately, despite all of this underbelly, stuff like that, for you, the main goal is to get your Bitcoin allocation, whether you're buying 1 Bitcoin or 10 Bitcoin or 100 Bitcoin, get to a minimum of 1 Bitcoin. And ultimately, there are always only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.